Okay.
Back the wrong way. Nobody was there, because I went by the model, I haven't seen the model homes yet, but I've asked if you found them. Yeah, maybe.
Commissioner Malari?
From the outside. Yeah, there was some people walking there when we drove by, but I wanna go when I can go slow and look at how nice they are. Yeah. They're really cooking.
I'd like to call the Planning Commission meeting of January 26, 2023 to order. Nicole, roll call, please.
Yes. Excuse- Commissioner Altman, I'm going to ask you to unmute yourself. Commissioner Altman? Oh, try it again.
There we go.
Commissioner Altman?
Yes.
Okay, there we go. Commissioner Cruz?
Present.
Commissioner Goff?
Present.
Commissioner Mohammed? Chair Malari?
Present. Moving right along, if you all will stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. All right, moving right along, we'll be heading over to public comment. This time it's reserved for members of the public to address the planning commission of any items of interest that is not present on the agenda and are within our matters for the planning commission.
Good evening. Leon Garcia, Mayor of City of American Canyon. I'm not here as mayor this evening. I'm a member of the public, so just a private citizen resident of American Canyon. Thank you.
Is there any other non-agendized public comment? In-person people first? Okay, we do have somebody on Zoom, Justin Hamilton Holm. I'm going to ask you to unmute yourself, please.
Does everybody hear me? I think everybody hear me. I just want to say thank you. I'm very patient. Very patient. I live here 37 years. And I do want to know if we have somebody to build a sidewalk. I know we're just waiting for a new house at the Dunmore with Karen Dunmore, and I think it's the perfect if we can have a new sidewalk in there. Thank you.
Is there any other public comment from those attending on Zoom this evening? Okay, Commissioner or Chair Malari, we don't have any other public comment for non-agendized items at this time.
Thank you. I'll go ahead and close public comment. Director Cooper, do we have any agenda changes?
Thank you, Chair Malari. We have no changes to the agenda tonight.
Fantastic. Well, moving on, looking for a recommendation to approve the minutes of the November 17, 2022 Planning Commission meeting.
I move to approve the minutes from November 27th, Planning Commission.
Do I have a second?
I second.
Roll call, please.
Yes. Commissioner Altman?
I'm going to abstain since I don't think I was there.
Okay. Commissioner Goff?
Aye.
Commissioner Mohammed?
Aye.
Commissioner Cruz?
Aye.
Chair Malari?
Aye. Thank you. We're moving along to public hearings. We have a presentation for the Watson Ranch Hotel at the Ruins design permit presented by William.
Everybody see okay? Okay. Good evening, everyone. Very glad to be back at the council chambers tonight. Good evening to the members of the Planning Commission and members of the public. My name is William, and I'm here to give a presentation on the Hotel at the Ruins, a design permit. Here's the agenda for my presentation. I will start off with a project location to orient everyone, and then I will give a brief history on some of the recent milestones of Watson Ranch. Then we'll look at the project description and zoning information. Then we'll look at some of the architecture around both the hotel and the 30 residences that's part of this project. Lastly, we have the landscaping plan, preliminary landscaping plan, and some site-specific issues. Ending with staff recommendation and how this project complies with CEQA. So let's begin. Here's a location map of the site. The site is shown in the red. It's kind of like a square. This is both lots 16 and 17 for Watson Ranch. To the north, we have the Harvest subdivision, which was Watson Ranch Lot 10. To the west is the Napa Valley Ruins and Gardens area, or also known as NVRG area. And then to the east, we have medium density residential zone for the Newell family. And then to the south, we have our Vintage Ranch subdivision, and to the southwest, we have the Artisan subdivision, which was Watson Ranch lots 14 and 15. The site is going to be accessed majorly by this future extension of Malin Way on the east side of the site. So here's the location map. And here is some of the history of the project. This is one piece of the Watson Ranch specific plan that was approved in November of 2018. Within the Watson Ranch specific plan, it consisted of 309 acres, and it was designated for 1,253 dwelling units and a 200-room boutique hotel. So the hotel was something that was already approved in the specific plan, and the applicant has submitted the design permit to finalize how the looks and the site of the hotel is. Within the 1,253 dwelling units, the site for Watson Ranch is divided between two owners. One is American Canyon One LLC, which would develop 1,010 units on 251.8 acres, and the remaining would be developed by the Newell family, which would develop 243 units on 56.9 acres. So there are many features of the Watson Ranch project, but today I just wanted to mention that the hotel was already part of it, and residential units were also part of the Watson Ranch project. Moving on to more recent milestones, in December of 2020, the Planning Commission approved the Artisan subdivision for lots 14 and 15, which consisted of 98 single-family homes. And in May of 2021, the Planning Commission approved the Lemos Point project for Lot 24, which consisted of 186 affordable units. And the most recent would be in August of 2021, which is the Harvest subdivision, which has been approved for Lot 10, consisting of 219 single-family homes. Now, all of these projects are already in construction, and I think for Artisan, almost half of them have already got building permits. So lots of activity going on in Watson Ranch. So here's the hotel. We have a rendering of the hotel. And here's a project description. The site itself is in the Watson Ranch mixed use zone, and the hotel is a permitted use there, as well as the residences. The site is split between the lot 16, which is about 11.9 acres, and lot 17, which is 6.2 acres. Primary access is from future Malin Way. The 200-room hotel consists of 3 stories with a max height of about 41 feet, 173,000 square feet of enclosed area, and amenities include 2 swimming pools, a spa, and about 6,700 square feet of functional rooms. The 30 residences consists of 18 flat units and 12 townhomes. Each of these units they're 2 units per building, so there are about 15 buildings for the 30 residences in the lot. So that is the project in a nutshell. And here is a site plan for the site overall. It's split into 3 sections. The hotel is on the northwest side, shown in blue-green, and then the residences are shown in the yellow, which is in the middle section, and then the parking is on the south side. Access is, there are 3 access points shown in orange. Access A is the main access point for the townhomes, and access B and C is the entry for the hotel parking lot. There's also a service loading dock access on Rio Del Mar East in the north side of the hotel. I wanted to show everyone the topography of the site. So the hotel is actually the lowest part of the site, and then we have the residential flats, and then it gets higher as the townhomes, and then the highest part that's not shown here is actually the parking. So interestingly, for the residential flats, they actually will have the garage on the ground floor, and then there's a floor beneath it. Whereas the townhomes, the garage will be on the ground floor again, and then there will be 2 stories above it. So here are some of the renderings for the hotel. The one on the top is the view from the ruins facing east, and then the one on the bottom is a view from, I think, Rio Del Mar facing southeast. So lots of high-quality materials that kind of echoes the former basalt plant nearby. And I'm sure the applicant can give some more info about the design of the hotel. I did want to share some photos and renderings for the flats. There are 2 options for the flats. For the flats, each unit will have their own floor. So there will be a owner on the bottom floor, and then the owner on the top floor. Lots of nicely done windows and functioning balconies and patios that you can see here. So here's the second option for the residential flats. And then here we have the townhomes. So for the townhomes, I think it's one of the owners will get the entire left side of the building, 2 stories, and then the second owner will get the right side. And for the flats, it's approximately 2,000 square feet, and for the townhomes, it's approximately 2,600 square feet. So a couple more renderings there. Here's a preliminary landscaping plan. the majority of, there are 4 species of trees that the applicant has proposed for the site, which includes valley oak and the Mission olive and California buckeye. So I did speak with my counterpart Edison this morning, and this site will be connected to recycled water, so they have the ability to irrigate with recycled water for their landscaping plan. So moving on to a couple of site-specific issues. One of them is affordable housing. The 30 units proposed will need to comply with the city's affordable housing requirements, and the applicant was required through their development agreement from the Watson Ranch project to provide 3 acres of land for affordable housing, and they've done that through the Lemos Point project. And the Lemos Point project will remain affordable for 55 years. This is a graphic that explains the split between the American Canyon 1 ownership, shown in the lighter brown, and then the Newell family ownership, shown in the dark brown. So the project complies with their affordable housing requirement. Secondly, there's a parking requirement. The project consists of both a hotel and 30 residences, and there's different requirements for each feature. For the hotel, the city requires 1 parking space per room, plus 1 for every 10. So it requires 220 uncovered parking spaces. And for the residences, it requires 1 space, 1 covered space, plus 1 uncovered space for anything that's 2 bedrooms or more. And then you also have to provide 1 guest space for every 4 units. All in all, the site requires 288 parking spaces, whereas 30 of them has to be covered, and the site is providing 294, which meets the required parking. The last issue was the site access. So the site is the access is mostly coming from the east side of the site through Malin Way, shown with access point A and access point B. And once you enter from access point A, in front of the hotel, there will be a traffic circle, so it allows cars to move in and out easily. And the service dock, as I mentioned earlier, is on the north side of the hotel. And to help with emergencies, there will be 3 EVAs, or emergency vehicle access. 1 connects directly to Rolling Hills, which is EVA 1. EVA 2 connects between the parking lot and the residences. And EVA 3 connects directly to Malin Way, north of access point B. So that's it for access. And lastly, we have staff's recommendation. The project complies with the findings of the design permit, and staff's recommendation is to approve the hotel at the Ruins design permit. And the project complies with the CEQA compliance because it's consistent with the approved Watson Ranch specific plan environmental impact report, which includes a mitigation monitoring reporting program, and all applicable conditions will be on this project as well. And the hotel at the Ruins permit complies with the final EIR mitigation measures. So that's all I have for the project. The applicant is here, and so I'll turn it over to Terry. Let's see. Yeah, I left it here. Oh, there you go. There you go.
Good evening, Chair, Commissioners. Happy to be here. First time in 3 years, back in person. So I'm a little out of practice in terms of coordinating the folks on Zoom and being here. So tonight we have Nate Heidorf, who we worked together on the project. And just to give context, Nate is married to Jeff Yeager's daughter, Alex. And Jeff is the son of Bill Yeager, who I originally did the deal with in, I think it was 2004. By the way, I'm Terrence McGrath. I'm the owner-developer of Watson Ranch. So Nate and I have been working together the last couple of years, and then on Zoom, I believe we have our 3 different architects on the design team. We have Robert Glazier, Ryan, and Trevor also. And then I believe also we have Will Carlson and Jason Neary from CBG. And so we've worked with the design team. I think it's now been almost a year and a half. And then CBG has been with me on the project for over 20 years. So pretty experienced team. But I wanted to, I think I can, how can I get this up, William, to just do a, on the, I just want to give you our latest drone footage so I can kind of walk you around the project and answer a bunch of questions, and then we can get into the hotel specifically.
It's weird, we're seeing it here on this screen, but we don't see it on the, it's weird. Screen?
You want me to try to hook it up to mine?
Oh, okay, it's moving to another screen, that's what.
There we go.
Okay.
Awesome. Oh, okay.
Look up there quick.
I can. It's not showing up, William, on my screen here. Oh, there it is. Never mind. Okay, so that's odd. So we're looking there to the northwest. Obviously, there's the train tracks. There's Highway 29. So what you're looking at is Lemos Point, the affordable project. 186 units. There's 8 pods there that contain 30 units each. So there's actually 240 units forming 186 actual occupiable units. And the schedule, I believe, is roughly June for occupancy. And this actual drone, I think this is footage from yesterday. So we got a little lucky with weather and clarity and everything else. But what I thought I would move you around, so this is Marcus Way, heading to the north, formerly Loop Road. Dead ends right here. This, as William alluded to, this is parcel 10. This is 219 lots. We've sold the first 38 lots right here to D.R. Horton. And I think we sold them in late October. And this, again, this is yesterday. So you can see the first 7 or 8 of them actually have the roofs on, and most of the siding is done on those. And they will start selling, occupying those homes, subject to PG&E energizing the site. They'll start occupying those homes in mid-March. And so within the next couple of weeks, the other 19 will also be under construction. And then they'll slowly phase through this project over the next 2 years. And I believe tomorrow we are finishing all the paving here, and then Saturday we're finishing most of the paving here. So we'll have most of the flat work done inside there. And you can see on the streets itself, obviously all the master backbone infrastructure's in, so everything underground is in that serves the entire project, not just what we're looking at here. But the sizing of it's all in. Streets, curbs, gutters, light poles are going in shortly, working on the landscaping And then this actual fence coming up Rio Del Mar here will start in the next 30, 45 days. So you're going to continue to see a lot of infill, and then landscaping will be, the big trees and all that will be done here in the next 90 to 120 days. So now this is looking to the roundabout, Rio Del Mar here, obviously heading east. This is the Newell property here, Newell open space up here. You can see the corner of the ruins right here, and then we can start to kind of, the hotel site starts to come in. And just to kind of give you the idea, or give you some reference point, William talked about the loading dock. All that access work, all that flat work is all in here off of Rio Del Mar. So the original specific plan, you can see our construction trailer up there, which, by the way, has one of the best views in all of the county. The view up there tonight was phenomenal at sunset. But the original specific plan had the hotel up on top of the hill. And it was always kind of intended as a placeholder. It was 4 stories, and I think from a 25,000 foot perspective, it's logical to think, oh, I'm going to put a hotel on top of a hill. But as we got deeper and deeper into the process, I had an experience a couple of years ago where I stayed at some private residences attached to a hotel, and the distance from the hotel to the private residences was significant enough where, and I was there for a wedding, was significant enough where you only made 1 trip a day. You kind of, made sure that you didn't have to go back and forth because it was so far. And that, the wind, proximity to the ruins gradually sort of changed my thinking, and decided, how great would it be to come down, turn off Malin Way, come down, a winding road with beautiful olive trees and oak trees, park, drop your car off. Your car then gets parked over the other side of the hill here. It's out of sight from everybody. It's out of sight from the hotel. It's out of sight from the private residence. It's out of sight from Vintage Ranch. And you could walk through the lobby, walk out to the deck, and walk down to the ruins. So that influenced a lot of the actual change in the physical location of the hotel. So literally what you're seeing here is sort of a pre-graded pad, and we'll start shortly on the rough grading of this. So the idea is that elevationally, and again, in our world out in the field, elevations are really important, but to give you some idea, the hotel lobby will sit at about 120 feet. And then you'll walk through the lobby. That roadway right there sits at about 110, 111 feet. So when you're standing you walk through the lobby and you're standing on the outside deck drinking a martini, you can see all of the ruins. You can see the Napa River. You can see the bay. You can see American Canyon. You can see Mount Tam. And then the roadway is about 110 to 112. And then the main footprint of the ruins is 100, and then steps down from there. So it was really intended to move the hotel very close to the ruins, so that the interface between the ruins and hotel and the ruins was easy. And so this is also intended to be a very quiet street, this part of Rolling Hills Drive. And you can actually see all of our prep work for our speed tables are in. There's 2 of them. There's one right there, and there's one down here. And then the private residences, top of the hotel, again, to give you elevation, top of the hotel is 175 feet. So part of what also influenced the location of the hotel was I didn't want to see this monstrosity sitting up on top of a hill. Obviously, all this is protected open space forever. And, when I'm standing down here, I didn't want to see this 4-story or 3-story building sitting on top of 175 feet. Because obviously it'd bring it up to over 210 feet. So then back to the story about private residences and where I was recently in Hawaii. I wanted these private residences to have connectivity to the hotel, but I also wanted them to be spatially far enough away where they didn't encroach on the hotel and the hotel encroach on the private residences. So we spent a lot of time with engineering, with the design team, with my construction team, and came up with, actually going back and forth, being in the field and on the chalkboard, figuring out where this road would come in here. And in the end, this will get cut back further so that the downhill part of the private residences will be sitting approximately right here. So again, a lot of room from the hotel itself. And then the uphill residences, because of the downhill uphill configuration, they'll have views over the downhill ones. And so these are an incredible amenity. I mean, I think that they obviously will generate hotel tax. They'll be part of the hotel operation. They'll add extra keys to the hotel, but they'll be sold in fee. And then we're going to have a placeholder up here for something. We don't know what. It could be a place to move an old barn, something that sort of is reminiscent, iconic of what you see out here with the barn here, or the barn that sits out in the new open space. And then, as William mentioned, the parking is kind of back up and over the hill and goes back down. I think grade there is at, or elevation there is like at 85 feet, 90 feet. So that really is what influenced the location of the hotel. And then sort of quickly, you can see the Quarry Lake is very full from the last couple of weeks. And then this is a look. There's Vintage Ranch existing subdivision there. And then this is 14 and 15. And as William mentioned, you can see there's the model homes right here. And there's another couple of dozen homes under construction. And they're selling at about 1.5 to a week. They've actually had some pretty good activity here since the first of the year. And obviously that's D.R. Horton, and that's the Artisan and Harvest neighborhoods. And then this is kind of back looking across the ruins. And just kind of a quick update on the ruins. This might make you a little bit dizzy. But we've submitted to the city our utility and underground improvement plan. We've also submitted to the city our structural plan. We're working on our design build landscape plan. And then we're also working on the user side of the equation. And the idea is that we'd be open towards the late fall, early winter of this year for a handful of small events to kind of start to test it out, and then gradually bring it fully online in 2024 and 2025. I hope to be back in front of you shortly with another concept, and that is a 2,000 to 2,500 seat amphitheater that will be built down inside the ruins right here. We finally have identified the location, and the actual the stage would be right here, facing sort of north. It's actually due east right there, and there would be a structure here that would be for the musicians, entertainment, etc., and they would be able to access the stage through an outside elevator, and access for pedestrians would come this direction as well as this direction along our EVA, as well as coming through Rolling Hills Drive. And that's also going to require a design permit, and we just started working on the design of that. So anyway, we don't have a formal presentation. We thought William did a great job. And that said, I also have all of our design permit plans, which I can walk you through based on your questions. Thank you.
Before we go to the commissioner questions, Nicole, do we have anyone on Zoom?
Do we have anybody on Zoom that would like to make public comment? Please raise your hand. Okay, going once, twice. We don't have anybody on Zoom.
Thank you. All right, opening up to the commissioner comments, questions. Commissioner Cruz?
I have no comment at this time.
Commissioner Mohammed?
Oh, yes, I do, actually. Great presentation, you
Thank
guys.
you.
Thank you so much. Questions about parking. Is the parking going to be valet parking for the hotel only?
I think it'll be a culmination of both park yourself and valet. And,
How far is the walk?
oh, good question. The walk is probably, where'd William go? Oh, William, you want to pull the diagram back up that shows the site plan? Yeah. And then I can walk commissioners through this. My sense is it's probably a couple hundred feet, 250. Yeah, that's good. Thank you. So, let me see if I can get the. I guess I can't get the cursor. So, if you look at the roundabout there, that's drop off. Obviously, that would be for valet. If you looked at Direct Park, you'd come in here off of Malin Way, and then there's an EVA connection path that's intended for pedestrian or golf cart only around the left side right there. So you're probably, well, depending on where you're parking, you're either somewhere between 150 to probably 450 feet away if you were parking way down here at the very end.
Okay, thank you. My second question is the roundabout, the drop-off. Is it one way in, one way out?
It is intended to be one way in, one way out. We've had fire already look at it, and the size of it and configuration has a lot to do with getting fire there.
Okay. And I think that's all. Thank you.
Part of the good question on the parking though, and this is sort of a little bit of a pet peeve to me throughout the whole project. What I'm trying to do with both the hotel, the ruins, ultimately the amphitheater is push the parking away, not only in terms of sight line, but also keep it on the peripheries. And I've looked at a couple other projects where they allow automobiles through the project, and it just doesn't have the same look and feel.
Thank you. Commissioner Goff?
A few comments as well. Again, I was looking at parking. That was the first thing that jumped out to me. It's a fairly significant walk down with luggage, but they roll. But on the way back up with luggage, it's a trek.
Golf carts.
And I understand golf carts as well. And then my other concern around the parking, again, was as you talked about the future of the amphitheater and all of that, and you talked about pushing all parking outside of, there's potential for a significant amount of need for parking.
Yeah.
And I don't have the full picture of everything that's going on, but that's just in the back of my brain is there needs to be a significant amount of parking available, especially when the event center becomes active, the ruins become active, the amphitheater becomes active. It's going to be a huge draw. And that's generally over all of this. I don't know if there's enough parking that I've seen to be able to handle a lot of that.
We have about, so let me see if I can answer the questions in two parts, and appreciate you bringing it up. So on the western side of the ruins, off of South Napa Junction Road, I believe we're going to have about, depending on how it's configured, anywhere from 750 to 1,000 parking over there. That said, on a special event, we're going to have off-site parking. We're going to have to park on a third party and have it shuttled in, bussed in. Absolutely.
You mentioned the hotel road to the roundabout is one way in, one way out. You see that flowing east to west, west to east.
Well, you'll come in off of Malin,
Okay.
up there in the upper right-hand corner of the screen.
So that'll be the main entry.
That's the main entry. And it's really, I mean, again, in theory, you're not generating that much traffic on it. It's hotel-only traffic. And then you can see also for the private residences, it forks right there at the very beginning. And those are plus or minus at the same elevation where the main entrance to the hotel goes off to the right, and then the main entrance to the residence go off to the left. You can't bring it all the way through to Rolling Hills Drive because of the grade change. You also can't, it's virtually impossible, if you wanted to wrap the parking around the edge of those private residences on the west side, you're also dealing with significant grade change there. And so it was a tricky design in terms of how we configured and laid everything out.
And can you speak a little bit about the decision about the addition of the private residences into this design?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you look at today, the higher end hotels, it's a big part of them. Ritz, Four Seasons, Montage, Stanley Ranch. I mean, part of it, honestly, is a way to help underwrite the physical cost of building the hotel. That's using rough numbers, $1 million a key, that's a $200 million project. And so what the development community typically today tries to do is, one, give flexibility to keys and frankly, room configuration. There's only so many configurations you can get inside of those two wings of that hotel. And then with the private residences, you have a little bit different in terms of bedroom count, layout, et cetera. But also, frankly, those 30 private residences are a way to help, because those are sold in fee, are a way to help offset the cost of building that hotel.
You talked very briefly, it's not in this design and not necessarily what we're covering here, about your trailer and the awesome view over there.
Yeah.
And I totally understand all of that. When I'm looking at this and thinking about awesome view from there, you look to the east, it's gorgeous. It's hillside, it's trees, there's a few barns out there. But the big draw is the sunsets to the west, without a doubt. When you look west, especially from that elevation, as you said, it's just absolutely gorgeous. Has there been any consideration in the design and the build of the hotel of an area that allows the residents to take in that view? I'm thinking
Of the hotel?
Yeah, some type of elevated patio, or I'm assuming there is no restaurants or anything like that included in this design?
Oh, absolutely. In the hotel?
The hotel.
Oh, absolutely. And then if you look at the main body, just to the slightly to the north of where the main lobby is, you'll have roof decks up there. Okay. And then remember, so think about, you have a wing that really runs north-south, plus or minus about 100 homes, and you have a wing that runs basically east-west about 100 homes. And if you look at where Due West is, Due West sort of almost intersects those two wings. So even on the ground level, because you're sitting at 120 feet on the Rolling Hills edge, Rio de Mar is slightly different because the grade is rising as you come up to the hotel. But on the Rolling Hills edge, those 100 rooms, those 3 stories, especially when you get to the second and third level, those will have phenomenal views. And then on the east side of those rooms, you're looking at the hills. And again, it's unobstructed. And then the wing that runs east-west, that kind of semi-parallels Rio del Mar, that one again will have phenomenal views to the west and north. And then looking out the southeast side, again, you'll be looking unobstructed over not only the hotel pad itself, but back into the Newell open space.
Thank you for that. Just to follow up, I'm going to step on Commissioner Altman here a little bit. So we're going to talk about eco-friendly features of the hotel.
Yeah.
Where in the design, you haven't really touched on much of that. I heard a little bit about reclaimed water throughout the site. Are there any other eco-friendly components of this that you can talk about?
Well,
a little bit about parking, EV parking. Is there EV chargers built into the homes that are into the residents there? That type of feature.
My assumption is there'll absolutely be that. There'll be obviously photovoltaic on the homes. But let me even back up a little bit further. So obviously there's LEED certification. But separate and apart from that, for instance, the wood we're using on Rio Del Mar for the fence that runs, I don't know, 3/4 of a mile, that's all reclaimed from fire. So we're having all this wood remilled from the Glass Mountain fire. The Quarry Lake today, there was an old storm detention basin, because I don't have the, anyway, there's an old storm detention basin that we had designed that was sitting right here. All the storm water from the hotel and from the ruins will not only be detained in the Quarry Lake, but will be retained. And so that will then also, we have the ability to use that for our own landscaping, both at the hotel and also separate and apart from recycled and purple pipe and all that. We have the ability to use our own rainwater, like for instance, this last storm, and reuse that during the summer. And we're lucky in terms of the fact that the Quarry Lake is such significant in size that we can actually store it. So ultimately, the parking, permeable surfaces. So when you look at the 1,000 parking cars inside the ruins, that there will be no asphalt. And ultimately, my goal, separate and apart from LEED certification, my goal is to turn this project into the greenest, most sustainable, most environmentally sensitive project, hopefully, in the world, in terms of processing all organic waste on site. We have the ability in the ruins, I believe, to do that. Separate and apart from planting deciduous oak, California live oak, almost every other tree planted inside the ruins, and to some extent also at the hotel, will be deciduous, fruit-bearing, with the idea that that is, brought back to use right on site, either at the hotel and the ruins. And so when we're looking at permeable surfaces, I'm a huge believer that there's no reason in the world to pour more asphalt or more concrete, especially when you live in the climate we live in here. It superheats in the summer. And so on the parking, for instance, in the ruins, we're looking at essentially like a landscaping block that you can drive on winter and summer, but it's very permeable. You may not be able to walk in it on high heels, but other than that, it's perfectly safe. So it's how do I say this? Separate and apart from bringing this project online, that's it's a culmination of a lifetime to get to this moment. Probably the next most important thing for me is to be able to show the world, the sustainability and how you can make something really green. And I will be there won't be a moment over the next 20 years, assuming I live that long, that won't be front and center to what I'm trying to do every single day out there.
Thank you. That's all I have at this time.
Commissioner Altman, any comments you got?
Thank you. First off, I hope you guys can hear me. My voice is kind of shot. I've been fighting a cough and bug for a bit, so please bear with me. Mr. McGrath, great to have you back with us live and in person. Wish I was there.
Thank you.
But wanted to make sure I didn't get anybody, pass this on to anybody else, because it's no fun. But I've got a couple of questions, and Commissioner Goff touched a little bit on some stuff, as have some of the other commissioners. First, I want to commend you for your comments about trying to push the parking off to the perimeters, just as a general rule, for larger, mass parking. I think that makes sense, and it keeps the site pedestrian friendly, bicycle friendly, pet friendly. I mean, it's just a much more pleasant way to do it than, and you and I have had this conversation over the years. We've had a few over the years, but I got involved with the Planning Commission because the original town center concept, I didn't like the parking. It was going to be right in front. It was going to be, kind of strip mall parking. And I was like, no, I don't like that. So to hear you now talking about sustainability and pushing parking to the side, I am an absolute fan. I love it. So I want to give you kudos on that. My question is, on the hotel, what type of, I know you've talked about weddings in the past, but what are the thoughts about conventions and conferences and things of that sort? Because the only concern I've got is 200 rooms enough?
I'm not quite sure how to answer that question. Are you punking me?
No, I look at my industry, which is a small industry, and we have annual conferences, and you've got, I don't know, 800 to 1,000 people.
Yeah.
200-room hotel can't hold them.
It's a great question. I mean, if you sort of pull back and get some elevation, I mean, I think, look at the world just over the last 20 years, what's happened on hotel rooms. And, no one was south of St. Helena. And then, Yountville, obviously, I think generates more hotel tax per capita than any other city, certainly in California, if not the U.S. I think the number was something like 20 million last year. And then Caneros, which was going on at the same time, and then Stanley Ranch. So if you're looking at it, it's moving further and further south, and what's happening in downtown Napa. I mean, the suites that's going, that's under construction right on 29. So physically, there's no way we could set apart the whole CEQA issue and the specific plan issue and everything else, and that, this was fully baked in 2018 into the EIR and CEQA and specific plan. There's no way we could physically handle, at this stage, more than 200 rooms plus the private residences. That said, it will be the second largest hotel in Napa Valley, behind, if you look at Meritage in combination. But I think what you're going to see is, as 29 gets cleaned up through American Canyon, you're going to see more hotels that I think fit a niche that support those kind of conferences.
Okay, thank you. Picking up on one of the comments that Commissioner Goff made, he talked about EV, and I know you don't have an answer most likely at this point, but I keep hearing that, while EV is the current trend and so on, that it uses a lot of, the mined minerals and metals and so on, and really, the batteries are dependent upon these things and so on, that the, fuel cell, the hydrogen fuel cell is ultimately the panacea out there. And I know there are some auto manufacturers who are making hydrogen fuel cell vehicles. And one of the big challenges is there's no place to load them up with hydrogen.
Mm-hmm.
I'd throw out there that, if you really want to be at the cutting edge, having at least, some kind of hydrogen fuel cell capacity or ability to, do that somewhere in the project would really be spectacular. So I just put that out there for your consideration. Otherwise, no, I mean, I'm a big fan. I think the project looks great. The little bit of pictures I've seen of the hotel, it looks good. I'm glad that you're working with fire in terms of the entry and exit points to make sure that we're good there. The fact that the, hotel site might have a little less access is not as big a concern as the fact that the entire project does have ample multiple points of access, so that there is that safety concern is covered. Because again, you and I have talked about that in the past. But yeah, I think great job as far as I'm concerned. Thank you.
Thank you. And I do have to acknowledge Robert, Ryan, Trevor, who are on the Zoom call. I mean, they're a world-class design team. I mean, Robert Glazier, up and down the Western Seaboard, has done some very, very iconic hotels. And when we first met, God, it's probably almost, a year and a half ago, he fell in love with the site, and he understood the site within minutes. And, reputationally, he has a phenomenal reputation. And so it's been a really fun project to work on. And, as I told somebody the other day, this is kind of the fun part of the process when you're doing things like this. Not that it's not great to build roads and everything else, but this is the fun stuff.
Yeah, so the last thing I've got for you is just a little quip. Are the residences the condos I've been pushing you for?
Say again?
Are the residences the condos that I've been pushing for you to include?
It's so funny because I had a conversation tonight, and I'm not making this up. I actually had a conversation tonight about townhouses. And I'm not going to say who the home builder is, but that's probably coming. My sense is that's probably coming next to the north of Lemos Point.
Awesome. Thank you.
And we'll segue right back to Commissioner Goff.
Yeah, thank you. Mr. Altman just raised something up that triggered something in my brain. It was really about the hotel is going to be situated in a center or close to a lot of amenities, a lot of things, and it's going to have a great view of the wetlands, and it's going to have a great view of the hills, and people are going to want to come there, and they're going to want to explore. And we're hoping that exploration is not done by auto, but it's done by foot, done by bike, something like that. So can you speak a little bit about the what is in there for walking lanes, bike paths, anything out, not only in the hotel site, but connecting to some of those?
Sure. I mean, the intersection of the hotel is River to Ridge and the Napa Valley Vine Trail. And actually, Malin Way, that section is the Vine Trail. I mean, that's built to the specs of the Vine Trail. That's physically there today that you can walk on from the existing terminus of Newell Drive to the intersection to Rio Del Mar. So obviously that will continue all the way north through the project. We're working with the Vine Trail right now. City Manager Jason and Holly and I have had several conversations with Chuck McMinn about trying to figure out how to build something temporarily that, probably is not, it's walkable, maybe rideable with a mountain bike, but it's not intended to be the permanent trail. And then Ridge to River, that whole section through the project is more or less in along Rio Del Mar. And then throughout the project, there's extensive PED access, bike access, and then the EVAs, the emergency vehicle accesses around the Quarry Lake, around the hotel, through the ruins, and through the hotel. In the end, those will predominantly be used by ped and bike. And so if you think about Napa Junction, where it terminates right now at the railroad track, essentially that'll wrap around the south side and the north side of the Quarry Lake, and you'll be able to cross Rolling Hills Drive, continue on through the hotel, and then end up at the Vine Trail. So again, I mean, I have never done an actual calculation, but you could walk for miles, essentially, inside the project itself, just using Vine Trail, Ridge to River, the EVAs, and then the actual other PED accesses that are part of the overall structure or overall infrastructure of it. Very extensive. Because I'm like you, I want to get out of my car and I don't want to get in it again. And I think part of the idea, back to where we moved the hotel, is the idea that each time, like, I don't like going to a hotel and after the first day of staying there, I've got to go somewhere else to have dinner because I've had breakfast, lunch, and dinner at the restaurant of the hotel. What I like about what we're offering the client, both at the ruins and the hotel, you could stay there 6 different times in a year. Each time you're going to have a different experience around what you saw and where you ate. And so we've said internally, the first time you come to the ruins not to stay at the hotel and the hotel's there, the next time you come to the ruins, you'll stay at the hotel. And so it's meant to be, very interconnected, with the idea that you could stay there a week and never have to get in your car and never have to leave.
Excellent, thank you.
I think it's great to be last, and all the questions have been answered for me. So, let's see. The farm to table question was answered. So thank you, appreciate that. Did notice a little bit of on the rendering, which is awesome. Addressed the 200 units as well. I was kind of concerned with all the events that we got going on, especially, the gala. It's also one of the largest one here, so I'm just thinking, was it enough? But I appreciate your response on that. In regards to conferences and the amenities of the hotel, maybe, just touching briefly on the banquet rooms and the ballrooms and maybe the ability to host a conference at this hotel, or maybe the amenities that we have, and to, have a pavilion built outside for a special event. Is that something that this hotel can accommodate?
Well, again, you're right next to the ruins, and the Parks Foundation you mentioned is a perfect example. That's 400 people, and that takes up, relatively speaking, one relatively small part of the ruins. And so, again, back to Commissioner Altman's question about more hotel rooms. If we have a 1,000, 2,000 person event, obviously we're not going to be able to accommodate them all at the hotel. Mm-hmm. But the hotel will have capabilities to handle their own corporate functions there, mm-hmm. but to a certain size. And then at a certain size past that, the hotel will be able to work interactively with the ruins if they need 750, 500, 1,000, 200, whatever. And the idea is also, it's one of the, I think, real selling points to the hotel, back to you don't have to leave it. Mm-hmm. I mean, you can stay there and attend an event, and that may be of a size that, is going to book every single room in that hotel. And it's a important part of the actual economic underwriting of the hotel, because most hotels, like especially even what's happening right now, they're doing great right now, Friday night, Saturday night, Sunday. The hotel business has fallen off a lot in the last 90 days, in the Monday night, Tuesday night, Wednesday night. And so part of the economic underwriting of this hotel is that, a little bit like what Meritage does, you can have a much, much higher occupancy rate because you have all these different abilities to handle all these different size functions during different times of the week and year.
Okay. And speaking of the Meritage, just because they have those ability to kind of transform their platforms and ice skating ring and mm-hmm. things of that, is that something that is the vision for this hotel as well?
I really think you're going to see most of that in the ruins.
In the ruins, okay.
Yeah, I mean, one of the events that, we gave a little bit of a taste of it, I think, not this past Christmas, the Christmas before, when we lit the silos. one of the events that we hope we can bring online this year is a holiday lights that runs for the day after Thanksgiving to the first week of the new year. And again, I see a lot of those things being handled at the ruins. Not to say that, the hotel isn't, lit for Christmas and trees and everything else, but most of those type of event-driven specific functions can be handled, I think, in the ruins.
Perfect. And just speaking of wise of just the growth and the hotel itself, estimation of how many jobs will this bring to the community?
God. I haven't looked at that economic model in a while. I honestly, I don't even want to make a guess. It's a lot. I mean, between the ruins and the hotel,
Yeah.
in 2 or 3 years, it's a lot.
I'd love to hear, that's just what I
Yeah,
want to hear.
I'll, you know what, I'll do a little research tomorrow and get back to you.
Yeah.
Because I don't like answering with it's a lot, because, that doesn't mean anything.
Yeah. We're just thinking, once this is built, we have the next generation and moving on, looking for opportunities.
Yeah.
And just venturing out, so.
Well, again, if you look at just we're going to end up with 2 amphitheaters, one of 400, 500, 600 seats, one of, 2,000, 2,500 seats. If you look at that alone, connecting to the hotel and the jobs, that's also, early April through late fall, that's running probably 25 to 30 events.
Yeah.
So that's a lot of jobs.
All kidding aside, you think of getting a garage structure going on, but thank you, I appreciate it. All right. Do we have any public comments?
At this point, we'll open up to public comment for in-person.
Madam Chair, I think we need to formally open the public hearing.
Apology, I'd like to open public comment.
Good evening, Beth Marcus. Gosh, like you said, a lot of questions have been answered. I really don't have any questions. All I can tell you is a lot of us has been involved in this since 2004, and it's been fantastic, and what a way it's changed. I mean, from what it was to what it is now. I hate to say, I know you went through a lot of money to get it where it is today, but I'm glad it's where it is today instead of where it was. But I remember having meetings at my house and everything, and I just want to say I'm just excited. I mean, everything is just fantastic, and I'm really happy for it, and congratulations.
I wish you guys had a microphone. Fran Lemus, it's been a long time coming, and I really appreciate what he's done for me, really, very nice. But it's something that's going to make our city so proud and so popular, and the church, I mean, it's going to really make everything come true that we planned for when we incorporated. That was our idea, and thank you for carrying that out. And I hope I get to be here for the opening. I'm working on it. But anyway, I really am so proud of our city and what the people that live here have done, and all the new people that are here. I think it's wonderful that they're interested. They love our city, and people like him that do nice things for us. So it's much appreciated. Thank you.
Good evening. Eva Garcia. That is fabulous. And I've been attending the conference, and companies would budget. We sometimes 4 of us in one room just to accommodate. So that would be good also. And I was thinking, looking at the EVA. What is EVA? So it's Emergency Vehicle Access. It's not my name. What? I am so special. And another thing is, so I've been showing the property, and a lot of people also are, townhome, and also single level. Are you going to have a single level home?
Unfortunately, not at this stage.
Okay. Yeah. But looking forward to see other things there. I love the homes. Thanks.
Hello, everyone. Luz Maristella here, and I've been in American Canyon for about 30 years, and this is my first time to attend a town hall meeting or a public hearing like this. And the reason that I attended is because I've seen a lot of construction going on in the community, and I go, geez, when it's time for my child, there will be no more canyon to look at in American Canyon. But so you made me feel much better that you're not touching some of the canyons that are preserved. And it makes me feel better that you are thinking environmentally instead of just going big without the precautions of environment and all that. So I feel much better. Thank you.
Leon Garcia, speaking as a member of the public, member of the community, not as an elected official. Thank you for the presentation. I appreciate the sensitivity that you're demonstrating with respect to environment and quality of life and the opportunity it brings for American Canyon. You mentioned the paving, what's your term for it? Permeable. At a conference I attended some time ago, there was it almost looked like asphalt. But it actually, they have a sample where they just pour the water right through it. Something like that might be something to consider as well. Just a small thing. Certainly, I think you're certainly aware of a lot of the environmental issues that are very much a part of American Canyon. Certainly the awakening of that for a lot of areas as well. And appreciate your work on that. Certainly anything we can do with all electric, reduce greenhouse gases. And who knows what the next phase will be. Certainly, as more electric vehicles come along, we're going to need more opportunity for charging. Solar ready, solar on the roof is another advantage point we could take. So again, I thank you for the presentation. Appreciate it.
Thank you for all the public comments. I go ahead and close public comment.
Chair Malari, we should probably open it up to Zoom comments.
Do we have any attendees on Zoom?
If you're attending via Zoom, please raise your hand if you would like to speak. Going once, twice, no comments on Zoom.
Thank you, Nicole. Officially close public comment. All right, commissioners. Looking to for a recommendation on what was presented to us in the Watson Ranch at the Ruins Design Permit. Do I have a recommendation?
I'll jump on that. So I make a motion to approve a design permit for a 200-room hotel and 30 residences within the Watson Ranch specific plan, lots 16 and 17 mixed-use district, located north of Vintage Ranch and accessible from Rio Del Mar East, Malin Way, and Rolling Hills Drive. Assessors parcel numbers 059-430-020 and -021, file number PL 22-0012.
Thank you, Commissioner Goff.
I'll second that motion.
Thank you, Commissioner Altman. Roll call, please.
Yes. Commissioner Goff,
Aye.
Commissioner Altman,
Aye.
Commissioner Mohammed,
Aye.
Commissioner Cruz,
Aye.
Chair Malari.
Aye. Thank you very much. All right, moving on down to the first order of business. The sixth cycle draft of public review for housing element workshop. Director Cooper, table's all yours.
Thank you, Chair Malari, Planning Commission, and members of the public. I'm Brent Cooper, Community Development Director, and I'm pleased to present the housing element. The Planning Commission back in October had a workshop with the City Council, but that was several months ago. And since that time, the city has submitted the housing element to the State Department of Housing and Community Development, and we're awaiting their comments. We expect those to be in February. I have a presentation for you. And my thought, since we have some new commissioners, we have a hearing scheduled for next Tuesday with the City Council. I thought I'd give you a preview of what we'll talk about on Tuesday, just to kind of get you primed up and give you a little, background information on the housing element, whether you were here on the commission in October and several months have passed, or whether you're new, or whether you're part of the public. Just happy to share with you what is the housing element is all about. So probably for those of you that live a normal life, you don't have to think about a housing element. And so at its core, the housing element is a plan that the city has to accommodate housing for all segments of our society. As a document, it's very much data-driven. It's very objective in that way. And there is a tremendous amount of work that goes into preparing all of the information that's needed to prepare a plan for everyone in society. Over the years, it's been required in California for quite a few years, but yet housing is still a chronic shortage in the state and seems just to get worse in spite of all of the effort that's done on housing elements. And so the housing element is required by the state of California, and it's the only part of our general plan that has to be reviewed by the state of California. So it's a very important document, but it does have an awful lot of information. So we have a graphic here that shows that we have policies and programs to help facilitate housing. There's an inventory within the city of where one could build housing at different densities. And then there's also a new component for the housing element that harkens back all the way to the civil rights legislation that's referring to affirmatively, it's kind of a redundant, my words, expression, but affirmatively affirm fair housing. And so what happens is that there are these fair housing laws, but somehow it isn't always implemented. There's ways around it. And so the notion that we need to really affirmatively affirm it, so we're taking active efforts to fulfill it, is really the concept there. We have a website, as everyone does these days for everything. Mercifully, you don't need a username and password to access it. But we do have a video that summarizes what a housing element's all about, both in English and Spanish. It's about 3.5 minutes long, and I thought it does a pretty good job of giving a quick overview.
It's time for American Canyon's housing element to be updated. Why should this matter to you? First, it's important to understand what a housing element is. The housing element is part of your city's general plan, developed to address local housing challenges and to find solutions to the housing needs of your community. With your input, these housing needs will be addressed through goals, policies, and programs. Your city's housing element must be updated every 8 years and must be certified by the California Department of Housing and Community Development, or HCD. HCD requires your city to identify suitable housing sites for a diverse range of income levels and a variety of housing types. This can include vacant land, existing buildings that can be redeveloped, and single-family houses that have the potential to build accessory dwelling units, or ADUs. Based on demographic data and projected needs, your city must identify enough of these sites to plan for a target number of homes. This is also known as a Regional Housing Needs Allocation, or RHNA. For this update, American Canyon has been given a RHNA allocation of 446 housing units, including 177 for low-income residents. Now that you understand what the housing element is, let's return to the original question. Why should this matter to you? In American Canyon, any individual making under $63,050 is considered low income. Ensuring there is housing available for low-income residents means ensuring housing is available for vital members of your community, including young adults, older adults on fixed income, and younger families. For example, will your adult children be able to afford to stay in the town they grew up in? Will you be able to raise your family in an affordable home? Will your retiring parents have a safe and comfortable place to live? Addressing housing affordability, access, and equity will all be priorities for assessing your city's housing needs. The Housing Element Update will plan for strategies to ensure all members of the community can have access to a healthy, safe place to live. Furthermore, by law, your updated housing element must address all the requirements to be certified by HCD. And if your plan is not certified, then American Canyon's decision-making authority can be taken away, and the state can take control over where housing will be built. It's important that the housing element complies with these requirements in order to maintain local control, so that housing policy reflects what the community decides is the best approach for providing enough housing. Your perspective and insight are vital to ensuring that the updated element reflects your housing needs and priorities, which are a key part of creating a plan that upholds your community values. Your community should be an ideal place to live now and for future generations, and the update to the housing element is an opportunity to have these community conversations. How can you get involved? Take a look at the information provided on this slide for more details, and thank you for your participation in these important discussions.
So we're really lucky to be able to have a video that can summarize things in such a way. I think some of the key takeaways is the extensiveness of and inclusiveness of who we plan for in our society. And I wanted to pin up our "We love everyone in American Canyon," but I thought I'd get in trouble for putting pinholes in the wall. But it's all part of it, and it's built into the way American Canyons feel about ourselves and each other. The other takeaway is you can kind of get a tone here that the housing element is a chance to begin to think about where housing should go. And I can talk about that a little bit later. But American Canyon is not like other cities in California. We're much better and different. And so as we're looking ahead to what happens in our city in the next 8 years, I wanted to remind everybody that we're at the tail end of 8-year housing element cycle. This was called the 5th cycle, and now we're looking ahead to the 6th cycle. So this issue has been around for a while, and it's a big milestone. So I wanted to just sort of share a little bit about, so as we look forward, how did we do the last time? And so William has been voluntold to prepare an annual housing element update. It's kind of like, and it's due in April. So it's just like the income tax of the housing element. There's a lot of data that goes into it, and it's a lot of work because the state requires every city to have a housing element, and not every city is like American Canyon. So as we look back again to how well did we achieve the objectives in the 5th cycle housing element, well, the city here exceeded its regional housing needs allocation by 147%. So this city is a very good one for being able to find places for a variety of housing types. I also mentioned, if you might remember the graphic earlier on, there's policies that we have adopted and programs to help facilitate housing. And in the case of the 5th cycle housing element, there are 38 implementing programs, and all of them were achieved. And that sort of report card is discussed within our new housing element, because the state's very interested in knowing, as they're evaluating our new housing element, how did you do in the last one? So hopefully the success in the last one will, they'll look kindly on American Canyon and the way it perceives housing. So kind of as you might be wondering now, there was a figure that was given in the video. The video was prepared early in our process. I think it was 400 and something was our regional housing needs. We're now at 622. I can explain a little bit of that, but before I do that, I wanted to just, you might wonder, well, how does this number even come to us? And so this little graphic I've got here sort of describes the steps. So we have some very smart demographers in Sacramento that work for the State Department of Housing and Community Development, and they calculate how much housing and population will occur in California over the next 8 years. And you know, California is an enormous state, and there are different regions within California, and we're within the the San Francisco region. And so the State Department of Housing and Community Development says, okay, within the Bay Area, here's how much of the state growth we expect to occur there. And so then they kind of push this number on to the Association of Bay Area Governments, which is our governing body for policies within the Bay Area. And then they go through a very extensive multi-year process to disaggregate this lump they get from the state to every jurisdiction, city and county in the Bay Area. And so out of that process, and there's hearings and there's rights of repeal, it's very in detailed. Out comes a number to American Canyon, and it breaks it down into, as you can kind of see here, the different income levels. So very, very, very low income, moderate, and above moderate income. And so, so that's how we get a number. Now, I want to explain a little bit why we have 622 and not what was listed there in the video. And the reason is that, not surprisingly, Napa County, being a very rural place with its agricultural land reserve, has a hard time fulfilling its regional housing need. And so there are times when we can collaborate with the county and in which we get some approvals from the county of things we need, and in return, the city accepts a portion of its regional housing needs. And that's happened in 2 occasions that has led to this change. The first one was in order to annex land to accommodate Watson Ranch, we had to have the concurrence of the county. And so there was a lot of land that was annexed into the city in 2010. And in order to annex land, you have to have a concurrence with the county. And that's a whole conversation unto itself to explain annexation process, but just it was necessary. And so in order to gain the county's agreement, they said, we'll let you annex part of this land, but we will need you to accept some of our regional housing allocation. A second agreement that was reached had to do with the Valley View Seniors Housing Project that we're all very proud of. It takes a lot of money to build affordable housing because it's subsidized. And so The applicant that was building the project needed additional funds. The county stepped up and provided $2 million. And that enabled the project to be finished. And so in return for that, the county said, we'd like you to accept a portion of our regional housing needs. So together, those two agreements, which I think benefited the city in, in many, many ways, came at a price of accepting a portion, which makes sense because it's in cities where you want the housing, really, and not so much in the county. So there's a lot of logic in both ways. But that's my very long-winded way of explaining how we have our regional housing needs of 622 units. Oh, and I wanted to say here, you might be wondering why this child is pointing. That's our 5th cycle child. He's 8 years old. So is the 5th cycle. And he's pointing the way. Okay, so American Canyon, just like any city, once they get their allocation, they lie awake at night, and they kind of go through the thought process. So the very first sort of low-hanging fruit would be, well, what projects do we have already in our entitlement process? Because those are ones that'll get built in the next cycle. And then there are accessory dwelling units that we think will get built. The state says we will allow you to assume that there'll be accessory dwelling units built in your city, which are kind of inherently affordable because they're small, based upon the rate at which they were built in the last 8 years. So we kind of did an analysis, and there are a few accessory dwelling units in our entitlement pipeline projects. And then, as mentioned in the video, you look at undeveloped sites that might accommodate housing that has the zoning to build housing. And then finally, kind of at the lower end of things, it's like, I don't have enough. And so then they have to identify sites that have different zoning today, and then they got a promise to rezone it. There are a lot of cities in the Bay Area that are in that situation. They're built out, and they have people who live there that oppose housing. It can be really tough. And so a lot of those other cities are looking at sites. So then it becomes can be very controversial to determine, the government's going to come in and change zoning on land. And people may not necessarily want that in order to meet their housing allocation. So it's difficult. I said American Canyon is different because this is a city that plans ahead. This is a city that takes the time to think about what it wants, and it doesn't do it, at the last minute. And so I wanted to point out 3 approvals that the City Council adopted well in advance of today. But these projects are what becomes our inventory of potential housing for this cycle. So the work that we do today really has implications 8, 16 years from now. And what a great way to do it, because it can be thoughtful. We're not having to meet a deadline for the state by changing someone's zoning to, last minute. These are things the city is doing ahead of time and doing it thoughtfully and in support. So I have listed left to right the Watson Ranch. That was approved by the City Council in 2018. We already talked about that tonight. There is an entitlement for 1,253 homes. That number actually doesn't include the affordable houses. So those are market rate houses. And of course, we all know we have the Lemos Point apartment project, 186 units or 189 units, a good sized one. So that goes on top of that. And so 622 is our regional housing needs allocation, and the city's approved a single specific plan for almost double that. In the middle picture there is our Broadway district along Highway 29, and there are 1,200 homes that has been accounted for in that specific plan. Some of them are under construction today on Melvin Road, and we have an application across the highway here for another apartment project, and I think yesterday we got a new application for rental townhomes, not ownership, unfortunately, but rental townhomes. So we have homes that are and projects that are in process to accommodate the Broadway plan. And then on the right here, we have the Oat Hill residential project. Mr. Hess, the property owner, approached the City Council in 2019 or 2020, some time ago. And there was a general plan amendment approved for 291 homes. The grading has begun. We have our building permit applications under review. So we have things that are happening. So that's how we do things in American Canyon. We're looking longer range, we're looking more comprehensively, we're planning ahead to accommodate housing. Not only does it satisfy our housing element, but it satisfies a lot of other things too that we want. I have a map here for purposes of demonstrating to the state that we have sufficient land and houses to accommodate all needs. We have up at the top there, the residences at Napa Junction. This is the apartment project that we have. It's under review right now. That one has 453 units. We have the Oat Hill project I just mentioned, 291. We have the Napa Cove down the street here, that's 66. Canyon Estates, that's another one that was goes all the way back to 2014. That one is 35 homes. And then we have Watson Ranch. We didn't assume all of them would get built in 8 years. We don't need to, but we have some projects already. We have the lot 14, 15 that Terry talked about. We have the lot 10 that Terry talked about. We have the Lemos Point Terry talked about. We also have some other projects that are also coming soon in Watson Ranch that are reasonable to assume within the next 8 years. So the city handily accommodates its regional housing needs. I don't think I have a slide on this, and maybe I'll add one for the council meeting, but the state would like cities to plan for more than its allocation, because they found that what happens is that in many places, they're assuming things that might be aspirational that don't come true. And so they want cities to have a buffer of something in the neighborhood of about 30% additional sites than what you're allocated. In case something goes wrong with the ones that you've picked, you've got kind of a spare off here that might make up for it. So our allocation, I think we have a slide on here later on, has about we're assuming 150%. So we didn't do 30, we did 150%. So we're hoping that engenders ourselves to our friends at HCD. There's also a very large outreach component. We don't do this in a vacuum. And so we have, of course, our website that Nicole has been working and continues to work on diligently. We have, of course, our video in Spanish and English. We've had virtual workshops because of COVID. We've had an online survey. We did stakeholder interviews with individuals who built houses, and we also have stakeholders who are in, I'll say, the helping industry related to housing, to do with fair housing, affordable housing, nonprofits, and service agencies, because they have a great insight into what's needed. We also went out to the community, and city staff, William and Nicole and I, went out to Meet Me in the Streets, which probably all of you did as well, and maybe saw us. We had a lot of fun out there, and we also went to the Juneteenth event, which was a lot of fun. These are all a lot of fun. And then we went to the Pride event at the Com Park 1, or is it Com Park 2, I think. We also visited our friends at the Senior Activity Center and talked to them. We went to the high school and had a great time talking to students there. And we also went to the middle school open house. So we got to meet not only the kids, but the families. And so we did the best we could to try to talk to everybody that would talk to us. We also had surveys that were available at all these pop-up events in English, Spanish, and Tagalog. And so as we look at back again to housing needs, I've talked a bit about this and it being data intensive. The research shows, and if you've been around a while and heard some of these things, it didn't reveal anything new. We have an aging population. American Canyon on the whole tends to be on the younger side within Napa County, but it itself is also aging. Our largest demographic groups are Hispanic and Latino and Pacific Islander. And the city is a net exporter of workers. Probably some of you might work outside of town and know that. The commute in American Canyon tends to be long within the Bay Area. And people who rent, there's a large amount of overpayment. So they do have to dedicate a lot of their income to pay for housing. So affordable housing is really a big issue for many, many people because housing is expensive compared to their incomes. I mentioned affirmatively affirm fair housing. Really, this is speaking to our Civil Rights Act and making sure that we look at ways of combating and counteracting intrinsic disparities and the like. And so what this is also speaking to are maybe some of the larger cities where you have a lot of disparity within the community. You have areas where they have really good services and grocery stores and schools, and then other areas that don't. And it tends to be that the better areas get all the attention, and the lower areas, just the lower income and the places that don't have these services tend to get ignored. Mercifully, in American Canyon, we don't have that experience here, but it is required to evaluate to the extent to which it exists or doesn't exist in American Canyon. So that is something that we look very closely at. As we look at elements of that in American Canyon, this is all, relatively speaking. There is in fact some areas where there are maybe linguistic isolation. You have pockets of people where English is a second language or may not speak it at all. We have a dominance, as we all know, of single-family homes. Single-family homes tend to be more expensive than other forms. And so that can be a deterrent to people being able to come into American Canyon. And perhaps those who are here may not be able to afford their house and then have to move out of American Canyon because there are no options for them to afford. So it's definitely, speaking to people through surveys and data, affordable housing is a very critical need at all levels. Senior services and housing is a need, to why we have Valley View, but more is needed. Transitional housing, there are many people who need assistance to help lift them up, and so that is a need in our community. And then, as we all know, and we have plans to make it better, but biking and walking are needs in this community. And it's exciting to see the River to Ridge Trail segments get built and these other things happen. And so it is, we all recognize that is something that does need to be focused and it does have implications for people who may not be able to afford a car or maybe mobility, confined. Having these other ways of being able to get around and connecting the network is really a way of being able to help everybody. There are programs in the zoning code that speak to these issues, and so that's included in the housing element. There are also a raft of state laws that have made a lot of the ordinances that we have obsolete. So we're going to have to try to work to keep that up to date. Some of the ones that comes up is there is changes to the accessory dwelling unit laws. That's just happened, I think, last fall. So our most recent ordinance was in 2020, which, as zoning goes, that's still young, but it's already out of date and it has to be updated. So those are all things that are mentioned in the housing element, and we can't wait to have the housing element approved so that we can get working on it. Because I'd mentioned, we don't sit on our hands in American Canyon. We don't sit around and wait for some agency to tell us something. If there's a need in our community, we want to roll up our sleeves, get working on it, and make it happen. So we, of course, have submitted our element to the state in November. Certainly have sympathies for them because all of the Bay Area jurisdictions have the same deadline. And there's, I think, about 120, if you think of cities and counties. So they're still trying to wrap up Southern California. There's over 400 there, and they all go to HCD, and they're still working on a lot of those places. And now the Bay Area comes up, because they cycle them. They don't make all the deadlines the same. Southern California is a year ahead of us. So they're still, working on them. And then the Bay Area comes due, and we're all piling it on them. So they definitely have our sympathies for the workload that they have. And the detail that has to go through, too. So that was sent to them in November. And then, of course, we're looking forward to consideration of adoption by the Planning Commission and City Council next week on Tuesday. And then we're looking forward to getting comments from the state in February. We've been paying attention to a lot of the letters. What they do, they'll write a multi-page letter with their comments. And typically, the letters are suggesting that you need to, explain yourself some more. So when you're talking about your conditions of, say, affirmatively firm fair housing, we don't think that you perhaps delved into the issue sufficiently. Or maybe we feel that you didn't go out enough to your community. So there's a lot of comments of that sort that once you satisfy all those comments, you're probably not going to change your inventory or your policies. You've done a better job of explaining how they are, in fact, relevant and necessary. So that's kind of a feature that we recognize. And so that's another reason why we feel it's important to take our element to the Planning Commission and Council. We have some very experienced consultants that have largely prepared this in concert with the city. They know the rules, it complies with the rules, so we're ready to say yes and get moving on it. So anyway, that's my kind of overview for the housing element. I hope I didn't make it too boring. There's no specific action on the part of the commission tonight. There's obviously, I'm not sure how long I talked. I'm sure it was more than 3 minutes. But I wanted to kind of give you an overview. I find that when we have some of these meaty types of policies, it's good to have a little preview before we ask you to do something. So I'm glad to answer any questions you have, and I don't know if our public here has any thoughts on anything related to housing. Could we, if
No worries.
the commission doesn't have questions for staff, this might be a moment then to open public comment.
Yes. I'll open up the public comment. No worries.
Okay. Can you please go to the podium? And could you please state your name again for the record?
Yes. Luz Maristella, American Canyon residence for 30 years. And I have a question on the ADU or accessory dwelling unit. Actually, I think I turned in my permit to not build one, but to have one in my backyard. It's one of those modular, mobile home, whatever you call it. It's already pre-built, and all they need to do is dump it in the backyard. And my question is, how long does it usually take for the permit process to get a FUB or not?
Well, thank you for your question. I think that's a great one. You know, modular units, we've seen them elsewhere in the city, I think, is a great way of being able to shortcut and speed up the process because it's already constructed when it's brought to a site. And it's manufactured homes are also certified by the State Department of Housing and Community Development. So they already do plan checking on the structure in the factory, and then they have a certification. And so that can help our review. When it comes into the city, it's required to have a permanent foundation and then access into it and then connection to utilities. And so thus the level of review that the city does. We have a typical turnaround time for 2 weeks, but I think what we can do is talk offline and we can find out what your specific situation is, and I can get you in touch with the folks at Building and Safety that are actually doing the review, and we can get you some for real stuff. But that's great, yeah.
Any other public comments?
The 622 units that you're talking about, is that for 8 years? It is? So then, with our new projects, we'll be at 2,747, is that right? I mean, if you talk about Oat Hill, Watson Ranch, and...
I think I know your question.
Oh.
Your head.
Yeah, I don't want to go to the hospital.
Yes. All right. So I'm going to back up a little bit here. There we go. And so we have, well, maybe some more. So within the city, there is capacity for many more homes than what was allocated to us either through this RENA process and our RENA transfer agreements. And so that's a good thing. So a part of what we're doing with the housing element is we have, HCD is a very important audience, we'll say. And their question to us is, show us and demonstrate to us that you can accommodate your regional housing needs allocation. So they're focused on, can you accommodate 622 units with a 30% buffer? And so mercifully for American Canyon, because of the foresight and advanced planning that's done here, there is land capacity approvals for many more than that. Now, some of that might actually take longer than 8 years to get built. Watson Ranch might be longer than an 8-year build-up period. And so it wouldn't probably be appropriate to say, well, all of them are going to get built in 8 years just because the specific plan says, there's 1,253 units. So what we've done is we've taken the 1,500 units that will get built with pretty good certainty because they're being built now. Or they've gone to the Planning Commission, they've approved. That's pretty certain. So we were able to demonstrate with great certainty that we can more than accommodate what has been allocated to us. And that's an important component to being able to have a valid housing element. So that might explain. I think perhaps it's like, you got all these, well, why aren't you just saying you're doing 2,500? One is we don't have to meet the standard that's been assigned to us. But secondly, some of them may take longer than 8 years. And so this is what we can confidently say can be accommodated within an 8-year period.
Okay, the other, well, I don't know if actually a question, but I hear a lot of people say to me, plus on Nextdoor, about how many apartments we're getting here. And so does all those units count for the 622 as well? I mean, I don't know any of this stuff, so I'm just asking you off the top of my head, but like, what is the ultimate number for American Canyon of housing that we could ever have? I mean, it seems like we're running out of, well, not running out of room, but it seems like instead of us being able to have more businesses, it seems like we're just getting more and more apartment buildings and things like that. It's my opinion.
Well, let me just say that the dwelling units that are being built because they have gone through a public process. So whether it's a specific plan in Watson Ranch or the Broadway plan, we also require, design permits, kind of like tonight with the hotel. That's, it's obviously not an apartment project, but we have public processes where we have a residential project, and we can explain how this is consistent with the land use policies that we have within the city. There are no regulations that say that an apartment has to become an ownership project. I know there's some wishing for smaller size, more condominium developments, but apartments are things that are in places where there is zoning that says this is the place to put apartments. It was really interesting in terms of the trade-off, perhaps I think you might have mentioned, between businesses and residential. It was really interesting. I remember meeting the apartment manager over at the Village at Vintage Ranch soon after they opened. And they say that a lot of the tenants that are living there are people who work in San Francisco, and they take the ferry. And so for them, this is really inexpensive, because in San Francisco, of course, we know it's crazy. But the people who moved in there, they said, are looking for restaurants. They're like, because they're from San Francisco, right? There's a great restaurant around the corner there. So they come here and they're like, where's the restaurants? I want restaurants. So a lot of these apartments, they have small kitchens. Who wants to cook, right? You cook in your kitchen and your whole apartment smells like food. So a lot of that people want to go out and eat, because both, they have a small place, you want to get out anyway, but they also tend to be the drivers who provide the feasibility for businesses and restaurants, because they come here and they're looking for services and goods and get their teeth cleaned, and they're the ones that create the customers for the businesses that are either here or will come here because we have stores. And Safeway is the example, it's probably the prime example. For my time at American Canyon, but I was told by people who worked here longer that the city wanted a grocery store, and they approached Safeway, and Safeway said, well, when you have this many houses in American Canyon, we'll build a Safeway. And we've got enough houses, and there's the Safeway. Okay, yeah, I mean, so a lot of, in my view, there isn't a trade-off between houses and commercial. The houses provide the opportunity for commercial. Obviously, people are doing more online shopping, and that aspect, whether they live here or somewhere else, is a deterrent to commercial. But the more houses and population we have here, then the more stable is our school district, our residential, in our sales and service industry. Plus also businesses that might locate in Green Island, they don't necessarily want to have people who come from Stockton to move in. So if there is a pool of people who can afford to live here and then work close by, well, then that's a good thing to encourage businesses to come to our industrial parks. So it's all kind of part of a larger whole.
So you're saying because we're having apartments, we're going to have more people, we can have more food places?
Well, they have to eat. So, I mean, yeah, as long as the tenants are eating, then they're going to find food from somewhere.
Thank you. Any other public comment?
Well, I just want to add a little bit more, I guess, for me, clarification from what, I can't remember your name. Beth have asked regarding apartments. If you look around, there's like apartments everywhere, and every little empty lot, there's apartment being built. So I think my question is, when is enough? Are we gonna keep on just building every time there's a space around American Canyon? To just keep on building? Do we have like a quota or where we can say, we are fully built and we're done?
Okay. Well, I mean, that's a great question, and it's one that we hear a lot at the Citizens Academy. So that might be something that does come up periodically, and we hope we try to help answer some of those questions. The city, I don't have our general plan map. I should have that probably in reserve for the next presentation, in case, similar conversations. But the whole area of the city is planned for something. And areas today that are open and empty probably have some kind of a plan for some development in the future. There are areas in the city that are planned for open space and parks, but much of the area that's already in the city is planned for some kind of use. And so your kind of question is, is there a limit to apartment building or multifamily? And the answer is yes, because there are certain areas of the city that are zoned that way and some areas that are not. And so the apartments that are being built in places where that type of use has been discussed when the general plan is adopted. And then after the general plan, then you have zoning that says, okay, well, if you've got a general plan area for higher density housing, well, then here's the zoning that says that. So perhaps fortunately from your perspective, not every area in the city allows multifamily. There are certain areas that does. I have one thing I do want to say that may not be good news for you and others. The state is cooking up laws all the time to facilitate more housing and doing it in ways that take away local control. And so there are a variety of laws where under certain conditions, multifamily housing can get put in places that you wouldn't think that's where it goes. But those are state laws, and that's outside of the city's ability to control, apart from talking to your legislature.
Could you talk about property owners?
Fran?
Well, okay, so Fran's question is, could I talk about property owners that pay taxes,
and they want to develop their property,
and they want to develop the property,
and people don't want no more houses?
and people don't want the houses there?
So what happens?
Well,
It's in the general plan.
it's in the general plan. So when there is land that is planned for a certain use, maybe housing, maybe industrial, maybe something else. And then there's zoning that says in this location, there's a variety of things that's permitted here. And so in places where land is permitted to have development, then the owner of the property has the right to apply to the city to build something on that land. And so it might be something that someone personally doesn't feel they want, but if the zoning permits that there, and they meet all the other requirements. I mean, development's not for the faint of heart. There's improvements, there's infrastructure you've got to build. Just talk to Terry. There's improvements you've got to build. There's roads, there's fees. It's arguably not easy to build a great city. It's complicated and expensive. And so the landowners who are trying to build something, they could have an upward battle. I'll give you an example of one recent one. There was a parcel where Fabry Statuary is located. In zoning, not everything that you might be able to do on that property is allowed, we call by right. The hotel, for example, in Watson Ranch, will say that is allowed by right. There's a right to do that. And as long as the applicant complies with the height and the parking and the setbacks and all those things that the zoning says you have to do, if they meet all those standards, then it isn't, the city doesn't have the ability to say no. But there are some uses sometimes where it's called a conditional use permit. And that's a use where maybe it's okay there. And so my favorite example would be a fast food burger place that charbroils, and they have these stacks that spew out charbroil smoke. Well, you might not want to have that next to somebody's house, but it might be perfectly fine, somewhere else in the middle of a shopping center. So that's my favorite example of something that's a conditional use. So when someone wants to have something that, has elements to it that could be, we'll say, incompatible with residents, then when someone proposes something in that location, then the planning commission, who will hear a conditional use permit, has a hearing and gets the staff recommendations, and we have our analyses, could make a judgment that perhaps this use isn't the best one to have in this location, and then you have discretion to deny it. But so everything is kind of talk to an expert to understand, all the different factors that go into these things.
Thank you, Brent.
Yeah.
I'll go ahead and close public comment. Commissioners, do you have any comments or questions for Director Cooper? No? Commissioner DeBette?
None from me.
Commissioner Mohammed?
So I have a couple of questions. Alluding to what Luz said, we've exceeded our standards for the 5th cycle. The 8th, we're wrapping up that 8th year, so we're at 622 projection, and we're exceeding that. From a business development standpoint, in the next 8 years, for the 6th cycle, will our quota be that 622? Will it go up? Will it go down? Or does it vary depending on the need?
I won't say it won't ever change. Perhaps the state might come up with a new rule. But for the time being, it is the 622 is the standard under which the state will judge the city. And I mentioned that William prepares a housing element annual report. So the state wants to know every single year, how are you doing at accomplishing your housing element? Now, we all know the city doesn't go out and build houses. The private sector that generally does, and to a lesser extent, a nonprofit, but it's not the city that builds houses. And so in my words, there's an implied suggestion that the city's doing something to keep housing from happening. So we have to provide an annual report that says how many houses were built, how many applications do you have, what head do you have that's coming in the future. So they really kind of want to know what's going on every single year. So it's
Will vary.
So the standard of 622, is something that takes seriously. Now, if they all get built in the 8th year, we'll be in trouble in those earlier years. And there are state laws that say that if you don't achieve your proportionate allocation every year, then you could be subject to various degrees of loss of local control over development. So, so we have policies. We do the best we can with policies, and sort of works out the way it works out.
Okay, sounds good. My second question is, we're building lower income and affordable housing for homeowners and the apartments. Do you know what that median income is?
I think it's about, we have, I do have a graphic here from, I'm gonna go back, there we go.
Yeah.
So, this is from just last April, so the numbers are still pretty current. So, these figures, so income, so the general standard is you have a household family of 4 people. So, using our high-tech pointer, if you have a family of 4 that earns $56,850, then they're considered very low income. Low income would be 90,000, moderate is 131, and you're above moderate income, but over $131,000. So this ties into affordable housing projects. The Limos Point project, for example, they have federal tax credit financing to help pay to subsidize those apartments. And so they apply for that. It's competitive among other potential projects. And so what they have is essentially a contract with the federal government to rent the units to families that are within these categories. And it may even be, in some cases, there are even below very low income. So they're often tied to as a percentage of median income. And so it's an important factor so they know what income qualifies to satisfy a certain income category that they're obligated to lease to. So they're important figures, but anyway, you're moderate if you're a family of 4 making $131,000 in Napa County.
Thank you.
Commissioner Goff?
No.
No, all right. I think it's amazing how we're continuously exceeding the expectation of our state, but I think in regards to when is it ever enough, I would say we would never know, because as new lawmakers come in and wanting to change, and also just, the demand, I think it's great that we're staying ahead of the game, but also just continuing to work with the county and kind of being a counterpart in helping the whole county achieve what's needed for the community. Great. So looking ahead, looks like there's no approval, but we will go ahead and receive and file.
That's correct.
Thank you very much.
Right. Well, thank you. This has been a great experience for me to kind of run through this very complicated document, and I'm happy to have this opportunity to be able to share it with you. Hopefully this will help our conversations on Tuesday with the City Council. I think that meeting is in Zoom because of the number of people. So that will be a Zoom meeting.
Well, also thank you, Director Cooper, for the City Planning 101. Hope you're able to do that with the Citizens Academy.
Yes. Well, as you probably discovered, I like to talk.
Yeah. All right. Moving on to the matters just relating to the new planning commissioners here and the seat and chair that I'm currently in. Looking to get recommendations for the vice chair in this matter for a 1-year term. Then we'll move on to the chair. So starting off with any recommendations for the vice chair for the 2023 fiscal year? Commissioner Goff.
Previously, when we had these discussions, we had talked about making sure that we kind of rotate through these positions, which is what we had put in place really, I think prior to COVID, with every staff member having an opportunity to serve, or every commissioner having an opportunity to serve in vice chair and then proceeding into the chair and then kind of cycling off to make sure everybody had that experience and that responsibility of leading the commission. And I like that plan. And I think in my mind, that's what we should continue to do, so everybody has that experience. Unfortunately, we're at a position where the previous vice chair is no longer placed on the commission. So I'm kind of very interested in a new vice chair. And we do have 2 members on our commission who have not served in any of those positions. I'm not sure on their comfortability yet, because this is the first time they've been seated and gone through the process. So I'm a little curious on how the 2 new members feel about being comfortable in that position or not before I make any kind of recommendation around that. I know Commissioner Altman has served in chair. I wasn't around for if he was in vice chair or not. I've served in both positions here. I know Chairman Malari has now served in both of those as well. So my interest is kind of right now hearing from the 2 new members if they have a comfort level or a desire to kind of assume that role.
Commissioner Goff, I'm going to jump in for a quick moment. And I had the opportunity to serve as vice chair for, I think it was probably about 2 or 3 meetings. And then things happened, and the chair had to resign and leave the commission. And I got vaulted into the chair position and was there for too long. The only concern that I've got, and given my experience is why I'm bringing it up for our 2 new commissioners, is there is a chance that you could find yourself in that position. So think about that before you kind of decide. You might, I don't know that any of us are planning on leaving, but life happens at times and you never know what the story is going to be. And that's how, and part of why I ended up being chair for as long as I was, because we then had lots of turnover going on through the next number of years.
Thank you that for Commissioner Altman. Commissioner Cruz?
Yeah, I'm soaking this all up. I am new here. I'm here to serve, and that's why I'm here. I'm sitting in this chair currently. If I were to sit in any of those positions, whether it's vice or chair, whatever the case may be, I'm willing to sit down with you, with both of you, with the 3 of you to learn. But of course, it comes with time and experience. But at whatever capacity you need me to serve, I am willing.
Commissioner Mohammed?
I echo Commissioner Cruz in I am here to serve my community, and if it's baptism by fire, let's do it. Yeah, and I'll do the best job that I can if appointed. If not, I appoint,
Go ahead.
I appoint Commissioner Cruz as vice chair.
Thank you. Going back to Commissioner Goff.
Well, it's nice to hear that our 2 new commissioners are here to serve and all of that, and I understand Commissioner Altman's statements as well. I know he did serve in that position for probably longer than he thought he was going to have to. But again, going with what we had talked about previously when we looked at assigning or selecting chairs and vice chairs, I support the nomination for Commissioner Cruz as vice chair.
I'll go ahead and second that. Get a roll call, please.
Yes. Commissioner Goff?
Aye.
Excuse me. Yes, Commissioner Altman?
Aye.
Commissioner Mohammed?
Aye.
Commissioner Cruz?
Aye.
Chair Malari?
Aye.
Congratulations, Vice Chair.
Thank you, everybody.
All right, moving on to the nomination and selection for my seat, Chair of the Planning Commission. Commissioner Gall?
Thank you. My general comments on this is, along with my previous statements, you have been in this position for a term now, and a lot of that, all of it, except for I believe tonight, was via Zoom in distance. So while the tasks are same no matter the environment, in person or in distance, I kind of support your nomination for chair for one more year to get the full live in-person experience.
And I second that.
Roll call, please.
Yes, Commissioner Goff?
Aye.
Commissioner Altman?
Aye.
Commissioner Mohammed?
Aye.
Commissioner Cruz?
Aye.
Chair Malari?
Aye. And I am honored to. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. All right. Let's move on to the approval of the 2023 Planning Commission appointment list. Does anyone have any, general comments in regards to that? Discrepancies and dates or anything I want to bring up now? I'll give you a second, Commissioner Altman.
Yeah, I don't see the dates.
This is appointment list, not calendar list, so I'm kind of looking for a little clarification on.
Yeah, I'm not.
It is in,
Shoot. Let's see. I can't bring it up. It would be from February 1st to December 30, to the last meeting in December.
20.
December 24th.
December 24th.
So the appointment would be effective of the next meeting through.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
I get any approval and recommendation on that? So February 2023 to December 2023.
So I will go ahead and move to approve the 2023 Planning Commission appointment list from February 2023 through December 2023.
I'll second that.
Roll call, please.
Commissioner Altman?
Aye.
Commissioner Goff?
Aye.
Commissioner Mohammed?
Aye.
Commissioner Cruz?
Aye.
And Chair Malari?
Aye. Great. Director Cooper, you're on the hot seat. Any review on the planning project list?
Yes, thank you, Chair Malari. I have quite a few updates here. So this is a standing item on the end of each Planning Commission. We have published monthly an active community development project list. And so I go over kind of the new information and answer any questions on anything else that might be on the list. But we do have quite a lot of new projects. The first one here on the list is called Bell Products. This is a very well-established company in Napa that would like to locate in American Canyon in a brand new building off Dodd Court. So we're really excited that a company wants to locate here. It's a very well-reputed company, and Building looks great, and it's a relatively new submittal. I know staff is reviewing it. We're close to having comments to the applicant. Eventually, this would be a project that comes to the Planning Commission.
Is that a total relocation of their business?
I believe so.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, in a brand-new facility. We have a second item here. We have a pre-application for Paintball Jungle. They've been out there off of Eucalyptus Drive for quite some time, and at one time had approval from the county before it was annexed into the city. But it does need a use permit, and so they have a pre-application with the city just to help them answer some questions and perfect their application. This would be a project that comes to the Planning Commission at some point. The third item is called Promontory, and this is in Watson Ranch. But this is the Newell family's property. And this application would encompass all of their property with a single-family subdivision north of Rio Del Mar. And then south of it, they have a triangular parcel that would become a park. So we're very close. I think tomorrow we'll be sending the applicant our comments on that. They did have a pre-application, so we were able to cover a lot of issues with them ahead of time. They were all single-family, two-story homes. The fourth one is a conditional use permit. This is an individual who bought a parcel with an old house on it at 1190 Green Island Road. That's where Green Island Road takes a right-angle turn north and then another right-angle turn west. And it's kind of at that knuckle there on your way into the Kendall Jackson warehouse. There's a little parcel off to the side there. And he has purchased it with the idea of it being used for his trucking business.
That little triangle parcel that's on the...
That's a different one where someone bought it with the idea of a trucking business. But this one is, if you keep going west on Green Island Road, it stops at, I think, Commerce. And on the right-hand side, it continues as Green Island Road north, and then it stops, and then it turns right, left, and it goes west out to the wetlands. And so right at that knuckle, tucked away in there is a parcel that had a house on it that's been purchased by this individual.
Idea how big that parcel is, size-wise?
Oh, I normally have the acreage on there. Well, do you know, it's maybe like 2 acres, maybe?
It's larger than one.
Yeah. Maybe larger than one, less than 2.
Larger than one narrows it down, thank you.
Okay, I'm going to sort of move on here. Let's see. Item 12. PG&E, of course, they're constructing their regional center up in the Napa Logistics Park. And I'd mentioned that new development pays fees. Among the fees that are paid are fees towards our traffic impact improvements. And so they've conducted a study that shows that their project deserves a smaller traffic impact fee than they would normally have to pay. This application request requires City Council approval, and so that has been tentatively scheduled for February 21st. Moving down to the bottom here on number 17, the Giovannoni Logistics Center. And that project was at the Planning Commission back in November, and we're perfecting the environmental impact report, and we are still on track to take that to the City Council on February 21st. So that's a tentative date, but we're hoping it's a pretty good one. Moving ahead to building permits, I'd mentioned in my presentation that the Oat Hill project is grading today. You've probably seen that. And then we have the building permit applications were just recently submitted this month for plan check review. It's a 3-story multifamily apartments, both in the upper tier and the lower tier. And so that's in review today. Kind of moving on to maybe page 8, under building permits, item 18, the Circle K fuel station, that one is just about finished. There's some details that they're still working on. And so they've are discussing with us an approval called a temporary occupancy permit. So this is granted when all the life safety issues are resolved, but there may be some other minor details that are still yet to be finished. But it enables them to start operation. And so it's looking like that might be able to open for business probably next week or two, would be my guess. Moving on to the more juicier items, the comprehensive general plan update, with the city initiated, we are working on, our consultants are putting together an environmental impact report. I'm expecting to get an administrative draft from them, which is kind of a screen check thing, fairly soon in the next month or so, and then we'll be bringing that to the Planning Commission. And so I'll be talking to you a lot coming up this spring. Of course, we have our 6th cycle housing element. You have update on that. Paoli-Watson annexation. That also has an environmental impact report. This ultimately would go to the local agency formation commission, which would rule on an annexation. And so that has mentioned the environmental impact report for that as well on its way. We've already reviewed an administrative draft. It's being tightened up. The environmental impact report process requires a public review period, typically 45 days. And so once it's ready to go, then it'll be available for the public to review for 45 days. And then there are a general plan amendment tied to that, zoning changes. So there's some meaty policy issues that we'll be bringing to the Planning Commission about that.
Question on that. When it comes to approval of that, the county has say, right, for an annexation?
They do. There's some required prerequisites, among them a property tax sharing agreement is a prerequisite, and I think there's some others as well. So it does require coordination. This is an area, the Paoli-Watson property is in what's called a sphere of influence, kind of maybe if that's the first time you've heard it, sounds kind of silly, but it's a statewide term, and it's land that's outside the city limits, but is recognized to be logical to add into the city at some point. And the Paoli-Watson property has been in our sphere of influence for many, many years. So it would be surprising if the county said, we would be surprised that we want to annex it. But anyway, that's part of the process. And I think that's pretty much my update. Oh, the one thing one final thing on the very last page, the very end, the Napa County is conducting a new study for their airport, the Napa Airport. And this is called a land use compatibility plan. So if you can imagine running an airport and you've got planes flying in and out, you kind of want to have to have some influence on what city builds underneath your airport. Because once you get things that are there, then you can have conflicts with crash hazards potentially, or noise, or various things. And so the airport has a land use plan today, and has for many years, that has these circles going around the airport. And as you go further out in the circle, their concern is lessened. And so all of American Canyon is in 2 of its zones. One's called E, which is the least impact zone. And when you look at your title report on your home, if you're in the E zone, it says the county, the planes can fly over your house. There's called an navigation easement. And that's a standard requirement for any new development in the E zone. Narrower circle band around the city, closer to the industrial area, but it comes even as close as Wetlands Edge and Eucalyptus is one area, portions of Oat Hill, northern portions of the Watson Lane area is in the D zone. And the Napa Airport plan today says that that is an area with significant aircraft noise. And in those places, housing is not compatible. We had a big discussion of this issue with the Oat Hill project because a small portion of the residential projects is in this D zone. And so the city has long had documentation that the D zone in that area really isn't a significant noise impact. So we've had some concerns about that. And the county has recognized that their plan is old and needs to be updated. So it's a really nice situation where the county is reviewing its airport land use compatibility plan. And I get to be participating in it. So I'm looking forward to that. But it's just starting up, and the first working meeting will be February 1st. So I'll have some more updates for you on that. That's kind of my review of the big changes here. If you have any questions on anything I've mentioned or elsewhere on the list, I'm happy to talk about it.
It's not on here, but that project that our sister company, Vallejo, in regards to, I think it's near the dog park. You're shaking your head going,
I know what you're talking about. I don't know the name of it. It's in Vallejo.
yeah, is there any update on that?
Actually, that is because it's in Vallejo. It's not in my list. It's not something that the city is, that the community development department is involved in, because it's under the land use authority of the city of Vallejo.